Well, now let's begin with a trialogue. Aligning with the theme of digitalization of Bharat Fintech Summit, we are transitioning to a speaker session focused on deciphering the 4C's of cash flow credit compliance cards for sustainable and complaint payment solution. The speakers for this session, let's hear it louder and let's welcome them here on stage, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Niraj Hutheesing, founder and director, Cygnet Digital. Ms. Priyanka Prasad, Director, Product Management, Mastercard, and the moderator for this session, Mr. Shashank Shekhar, co-founder and head of consulting, the Digital Fifth. Let's hear it louder for all three, and welcome here once again.
Right? Yeah, perfect. So I think till the time crowd will gather in the room because the ED session is going on and that could be the reason. But I think in the context of time, I think and respecting the others who are already there in the room, we'll start the session. So very interesting sessions that we will have where that we'll try to unveil that different challenges pertaining to SME credit, right? And MSME credit, which is always then spoken about that this is a segment which has largely been unserved in the credit. And then how the typically cards can also solve into that aligning with the payment solutions, right? So I'm privileged to have Niraj sir here in the room. He has been leader in leading that Cygnet Digital, who has been driving lots of RegTech solutions, compliance, GST, the lending stack, lending technology stacks, and working very closely with the ecosystem of GST, IRP, and all these things. So that's there. And then we have a Priyanka. Priyanka leads the credit card business in South Asia at Mastercard. And I think she has been there in card industry for almost 2 decades. So we'll get the good perspective from her, especially about the MSME credit. So thank you, both of you. Okay. So I think we'll start with you and then pick up your thoughts, Priyanka. Credit is definitely a challenge, right? If you look at it in industry, in the retail, if you look at it, salaried class is always the preferred one, and MSME also is like those who have a good record, GST registration, they are always the preferred ones, right? But large segment and statistics, there almost 90% of MSME is deprived of the cards, and the population retail side also the non-salaried, self-employed always have a challenge. So just starting with you, Niraj, how do you see that credit evolution has happened in the country, especially the role of the credit underwriting, because ultimately credit underwriting is the core of the credit business, right? So how the credit evolution has happened, and then Priyanka, I'll pick up your thoughts.
I personally feel that there is a major evolution or a revolution that should happen into the credit space, because we are kind of used to looking at very conventional data points when it comes to underwriting for the SME, MSME and other segments. And very honestly, there are so many alternate data points now available, and data points which are kind of real time. The information is available in a much better way. And if we start looking at those pointers in terms of underwriting mechanism and we start adding it to the kind of underwriting models, then it can make a big difference. The current penetration of credit or current penetration of cards for SME, MSME is actually peanuts. And I was talking to one of the largest players specifically for the commercial cards, and the penetration is not more than 50,000 cards. So there is a huge potential. The cards penetration is much more, but when it actually comes for commercial cards, specifically for business and specifically for vendor payments or tax payments, the penetration is very low. So with the alternate data sources, there is a huge potential to kind of enhance this ecosystem, and that is what people should start looking forward to it.
No, you rightly said, even a company like us, when we try to apply for a commercial card, we have to get a secured credit card. Right? Yeah. So what I was saying that when we also try to apply for the commercial card, we got a secured credit card only, right, against the FD. That's only the option is available for the MSMEs. So Priyanka, how do you see on the retail side of it, how the credit evolution has happened, and especially that evaluation side of that, and I'll come to data part of separately.
So if you see how the economy has also changed in the last decade or so, right, there's a growing middle class that we see. A lot of the borrowers, the new borrowers, are really young people, less than 30 years of age. So the way credit has evolved is now we are seeing a new segment emerge which has the money to spend, which wants to spend, but they may not have any credit history, so to say, in the traditional form. So underwriting and extending credit to them is what, is the challenge that everybody is trying to solve for. And I think that is where an alternate underwriting or, alternate data sources comes into the picture. And that is really the revolution that we want to see take place in the country. Because, with purchasing power, increasing purchasing power, this is what will drive the overall growth of the economy as well. So we want to further drive this consumer spending in all ways possible.
No, absolutely. Because in the consumer also, in the credit card, especially the card business, if you look at it, penetration is still very low as compared to the debit card, you look at it, right? Now I come to look at the digital public infrastructure which has evolved in the country and which made the data available. Like if you look at it from the country perspective, we are getting into the data-led country, right? So, Niraj sir, I'll try to pick up your thoughts. One is that on one hand, you have the structured data of an individual or the business with respect to GST, now account aggregator. You have already launched the account aggregator. So, account aggregator data, yeah, and then all the other income tax data and everything. Now, that has been solving to a credit to a certain extent, but how do you see the evolution of the entire data public infrastructure contributing to the credit underwriting process, and how does this combine with the non-traditional which Priyanka brought into the picture, like non-traditional set of the data? So how do you see that things working?
So I would say with the kind of account aggregator ecosystem and kind of monthly we are seeing the numbers, it's exploding. But we are still kind of scratching the surface. We have not deep dive, and still the kind of acceptability or kind of what you called is acceptability of the financial institutions in being able to accept these data points and kind of bring it into the real-time systems by which they can use it for the credit underwriting is still in its infancy. The potential is huge, and I was talking to Priyanka sometimes back, and we have a traditional kind of a trading business or a manufacturing business. And 70 to 80% of the people that we deal with him do not fall into the conventional way of credit. But when you kind of take the GST data, they are extremely compliant on the GST space because that is extremely critical for the business to function. And taking that particular data point and adding it to the conventional data points and the kind of CIBIL scores or others to an extent will actually make very interesting decision making faster. And honestly, there is a time in India now, like we need to shift from a collateral based lending to a more a business based lending, and that's not happening at the speed it is. Means like on one side we talk about all the startups and we want to fund them and we want to trust them. At the same time, the business who have been there for ages and kind of having a steady growth or a very good reputation in the market, they are not getting the credit at the level that should be given. But having said that, the thought process have changed, the mindsets are there, and people are looking forward to this change to coming in. So I think I'm very positive about the change coming into this space.
And Priyanka, how do you see in the consumer side of it?
So absolutely, echo the sentiments that Niraj sir has shared. So let me just give you a perspective once on the MSME side as well. So traditionally, what we saw large banks, large financial corporations, they focused more on the organized side or, the larger MSMEs. The micro and the smaller entrepreneurs were always kind of excluded when it came to extending credit. So I think that mindset shift is happening because of the alternative data sources which are available and which are accessible through the account aggregator framework that's there. Similarly, on the retail side of things as well, like I talked about earlier, right, that with this increasing middle class and, you see a lot of youngsters trying to gain access to credit, just a simple salary statement or understanding what their financial status is not going to be enough. You need to look at them in a more holistic fashion, understand what is it that they're doing outside of just their bank account as well. And I think right now, if you just start analyzing people's social media behavior, just try and see their e-commerce behavior, you will get a lot of insights which you would not get by just looking at their simple bank statements. So I think banks too have realized that just a traditional way of underwriting is not going to work anymore. If you want to increase the universe that you're reaching out to, if you want to make credit more acceptable, you will have to look at newer ways of underwriting and extending credit.
No, absolutely. So, Niraj, I'll come back to you again, speaking the threats. When you're talking about the micro, right? And micro segment is still largely self-employed segment, right? Sole proprietors. And it's very typically difficult to segregate between his income and this individual side of it. Where do you see the role of that non-traditional data solving? Because that's a large population.
I think this is one area where the highest amount of innovation will happen. So when you kind of talk about a micro segment and self-employed, everybody is using a kind of a QR code to take payments. Everybody is using a POS terminal to take payments. These are the two data points which are absolutely available. Now when you kind of use those data points and create kind of frameworks around which you can actually give credit to them, it is important. And one very interesting concept which kind of came in for us, and that is something we also want to kind of work into it, that it's a kind of what you call a suggestive credit scores was a concept which came in for us. And as an organization, if I'm giving credit to maybe a ABC corporation, and I give a score that I have a kind of a 80%, 90% assurance on getting timely payment from that particular person. And if similarly such ecosystems evolve into multiple different anchor clients or with the help of anchor kind of companies, then it can make life very easy for these people to get credit. Because if such a small person is either my vendor for me or is a kind of a client for me, and I'm kind of regularly working with them, then a suggestive credit score which can come from the corporate world could actually make life much easier for these people to get credit into it. So these are the types of frameworks where more in-depth innovation has to come in, and which will kind of ensure that quality credit at a very reasonable rate flows to these people.
Thanks. And you spoke about that from the collateral based to the business flow based of the credit, right? And invoice financing comes into that first, like he has raised an invoice, and then invoice financing can be done to scatter to his working capital, right? So there, that how do you see that invoice financing gonna contribute to the entire the MSME credit? And what are the challenges that you foresee? And then I'll pick up the Priyanka from the same. So if you can just share.
Very honestly, this is one area where no work has happened. Yeah, very little work has happened. Means like the way you are seeing the kind of factoring companies, kind of play that is happening. They are growing at a phenomenal pace. But still, it's only kind of scratching the surface. So as a IRP, I have daily around more than 10 to 15 lakhs invoices being registered onto our portal. They are not being financed. Now, what information?
Would be the percentage? Sorry, what would be the percentage?
It's a kind of, it will be less than point some percentage which are being financed. So it's less than 1% even to that extent. But the potential is huge. What do you need to finance a kind of such a thing? You need their kind of past record. With the GST data, you have their past record. You want to kind of know whether the actual good movements have happened. You have the e-way bill information. You have FASTag information to even see that that particular vehicle has moved to that destination or not. That information is available. The invoice is an e-invoice, so that is kind of registered on the government portal. What more information do you kind of need to have a genuinity of the transaction? And this is the area where maximum amount of work needs to be done to finance this transaction, and that can completely change because you are financing for a short term, maybe 30 days or a 60 days or a 90 days, and that could actually help the small players to grow much faster. And we normally kind of, so I come from old school in terms of business credit, and we say the traders want credit only on Holi Diwali time. So they need it in March, they need during the Diwali time when they get maximum discounts. That is where they need the maximum funding to happen. So these are the areas which really needs to be innovated and kind of looked upon into it.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe Priyanka, I'll extend that question to the, since we are talking about the funding for the working capital and the cash flow. How do you see the commercial cards solving the cash flow issues for these? Because that's always a big challenge for him, right? So how do you see that?
So like, Niraj sir mentioned that, some of the largest banks, when you talk to them, their portfolio of commercial cards is still in thousands. And when you look at the MSME as an entire segment, it's more than 63 million, right? So there's a huge, huge gap. But I mean, why not a commercial card? It solves for immediate cash flow issues, right? The kind of benefits that you would get by using a commercial card is similar to what a person would get by using a personal credit card, right? So that upfront credit period is something that, the entrepreneurs can enjoy. They get all the expenses in one statement, which otherwise is a huge challenge for them to kind of, reconcile at the end of every month. I think the benefits are many, and banks are also now getting into this space. We just saw announcements by some very large banks who have introduced business cards just last week, right? We saw 4 business cards being launched.
Yeah.
I think so that opportunity, that realization that the opportunity is there has happened, and you will see a lot of excitement and innovation come into this space.
No, as an MSME kind of thing, we can also tell, like, once you have the card, you're not bothered. You have just keep on doing the transaction, and
Absolutely.
at the end of
So
the month,
any of your short-term, cash needs can be solved for. You don't have to wait for, any of your invoice or your receivables to come in before you decide to do your next transaction. So it solves for your day-to-day transaction, issues. With more and more transaction, even, SMEs are doing a lot of digital transactions. So a commercial card becomes a ready tool which you can start using from day one for all your digital transactions as well. So I think the benefits are there. The awareness of how to gain access is something I think that everybody is trying to solve for.
thanks. And last bit, primarily I would touch upon that compliance, like one of the C's are part of it. Like onboarding of this segment is also not easy, right? Identification, the verification part of it, while underwriting the data is there. But how do you see, because in that process that typically banks are more apprehensive to get into that, and MSME is trying to solve. But what are the challenges that you see addressing the compliance issues with respect to this segment? And then how the frameworks like account aggregator, the India stack, GST and all these things, solving those issues?
So I think if you kind of interlink the 4C's, if I don't comply, I don't get my payment on time. If I don't get on my payment on time, my cash flow is going to be impacted. If my cash flows are going to impact it, my credit ratings are going to go down. And if I don't want those 2-3 things to happen, then I need a kind of a short-term cash flow, short-term funds, which will help to fulfill my compliance requirement. Commercial cards or cards is the best kind of tool for this to happen. So when we look at this entire ecosystem for the customer, and Priyanka rightly added that we should have the 5th C, that is the customer, which kind of comes into play. Along with this 4C, the 5th C kind of comes into play. Now, the challenge is not, I think one thing I will credit this government, we have too much data available. The problem is trust on that data, having the right instruments to understand that data, and trying to kind of come up with solution on which we can trust that data and come in. So you have to come out of the kind of wisdom or a conventional wisdom or the way of working that we had for maybe decades, and now need to look at credit in a very new way. And that is something which is happening. Is it happening at the pace it should happen? The answer is no. Can it happen much faster? The answer is yes. But it's a mindset. And this type of forums actually will help in kind of understanding these problems better, changing the mindset, and kind of leveraging the area in a better way. So these alternate data points are available, and they are kind of coming thick and fast. So I think on a daily basis, a new data point is coming. And we really struggle in kind of tuning our applications to accommodate those data points. So it's not of having less information, it's having ample information, but understanding the data points, and along with like account aggregator framework, GST framework, kind of means like NICDC, like so many different data points are coming in, which really makes our life much difficult or a much easy the way you see it, but you need to consume it and kind of adapt to it and come up with a framework by which you can issue more credit around it.
Thank you, sir. And Priyanka, you work very closely with regulated entities like banks, NBFCs. And so how do you see these challenges of identification, verification, and the framework solving it?
So I'll just, draw a corollary from the retail world. So we see almost 60% customers, drop off during the application stage because the journey is too clunky. You don't want to, you are made to believe that the entire journey is going to be digital, but then there's some statement you need, there's some photograph you need. So when you talk about an account aggregator format, it's literally an entire digital journey. And Shashank, you are aware, we did this extensive research just a few months back, BCG, KPMG with Digital First, and where we realized that, account aggregator framework is going to be the thing of the future. And Cygnet came out as a very strong player in that research. So with the account aggregator framework, we now see that entire journey happening very seamlessly for customers, literally at the click of a button. So, your identification, verification will happen instantly. Your information on, your income statements can be pulled instantly. So it's now that we see the entire journey being a lot more seamless and digital in the true sense. So we are very happy that, there are such initiatives and such frameworks in place. And we know that, there are over 1 billion accounts which already are part of the account aggregator framework. So it's a universe which is there growing, and we're happy to tap into it.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So I think this was pretty good. Getting the multiple dimensions from Niraj and Priyanka from the challenges of MSME credit and how the commercial card and the entire framework solving, and also providing a good insight of the IRP. That IRP is primarily designed to solve lots of issues, but I think it will take time. But I think we are moving in the direction. And with the evolution of the IRPs, the account aggregator, GST frameworks, and then coupled with alternate source of data, because the systems are being made, as I said, that systems are getting designed to handle those data, and then it may continue to move in the direction where that MSME credit and the cash flow issues get solved out. So thank you very much, Niraj sir. Thank you, Priyanka, for being with us.
Thanks,
Thank you very much for the
Thanks,
lovely
Shashank.
discussion.
Thanks, Priyanka.
Thank
for
you,
this.
pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you so much.